You're now watching B2B Vault, the Biz-to-Biz podcast, hosted by Alan Kopelman, powered by Nationwide Payment Systems, the #1 solution for payment processing.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of B2B Vault, the Biz-to-Biz podcast, where we talk about business and entrepreneurship, AI, technology, and a host of other things. And welcome to the podcast today. Gal Co. I thought I was getting Gal Gadot, but that didn't work out. She's busy today, but we have Gal Co on today from PodStar, and we're going to talk all about podcasting, do's and don'ts, why you should guest on podcast, why maybe you should start a podcast, some of the pitfalls. I've been podcasting for about 3 years with over 350 episodes. Recently, B2B Vault has finally hit into the top 50 in entrepreneurship on Apple Podcasts, and we're in the top 200 and sometimes in the top 100 for business, which is an awesome feat to get to on Apple Podcasts, and that's through hard work and having great guests on the show like Gal today. So let's dive in and tell everybody about yourself and what you do.
Okay, first of all, thank you, Alan. I'm so happy to be here. I've been a listener, and I've been pitching you with my guests, with my clients for a while now, and it is truly a remarkable way for me to give some value back to the listeners and for you as well, for the shows I work with. So my name is Gal Co, as mentioned, and what I do I do three things. I teach marketing because I've been around for over 16 years. I've been doing marketing for over 16 years now, and I teach marketing at Google and Reichman University. So I help people pivot from their old careers to their new careers in marketing and digital marketing for tech industry specifically. That's just one thing. The other thing is I do product marketing for B2B startups and big tech companies. I help them raise over $20 million so far. But working with founders and entrepreneurs led me to this position where I was furious because the cost of acquisition these days is so high. In order to get a lead or a demo done through LinkedIn, it will cost you around $800. And that's just a demo. It doesn't mean necessarily that they become a client. And in order to get to the right persona, you need to work so hard to create content. And as a founder, you don't want to go on that treadmill and just run all the time. You want to do it the right way and have your message heard by the right audience. So I came up with the idea to feature my clients on other people's show where they already established their audience, their listeners, and they already have their show going, like you, for example, which is top 5% of the world. I mean, it's a no-brainer to go on a show like yours, for example. So this is what I do. I match founders with podcast hosts and let them do their magic.
Yeah, it's and I know, like we were talking before, so not everybody can. I see people start a podcast, they get about 5 or 10 episodes in and they quit. Part of it is, the person who inspired me told me, he goes, you're going to make 50 to 100 podcasts and they're probably going to be horrible. And then you're going to start figuring it out. And that's what happened. We figured out a formula, and, you just can't take every guest because I get inundated, especially once we got into the top 200 on Apple. We started getting emails, 5, 6 emails every day, pitches, right? And I mean, I could host a podcast if anybody ever wants to do this, and you could have a business coach on you could do 365 podcasts.
Yeah,
one a day,
absolutely.
and have coaches. But I can't, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to have every single coach. So, on my podcast, I try to find interesting guests, Gal being one of them. What a great service that he's put together. And he has a school page and, matching people up. So talk about like why it's important, and guesting on podcasts. Like I have a goal this year. So my goal is last year I did about 20 guest appearances on podcasts. This year I set a goal for myself to do 50.
Oh, wow. 50, I think we can, it's manageable. It's really manageable. Especially when you have all this track record with you. So yeah, obviously you're a no-brainer as a guest. But that's one of the pain points where people start. You know what? Let's start with the beginning, okay? I don't recommend any founder to open up their own podcast. You know why? It's like when you're out of shape, okay? It's like, let's say it's December and you want to try to get back in shape. It's January, okay? It's the right time to commit to yourself. But instead of going and just signing up to the gym, having your own show is like opening your own gym.
Right.
Okay. Because as a founder, it is not a thing to do because, it's like so many hours. I bet that you spend so many hours curating who's going to be the right guest, marketing the podcast, editing, even like this beautiful location that you have, the beautiful frame that you have behind you. It's something that you put money and effort into. And those kind of things, those kind of decisions are not the right decisions for founders who are leading their tech companies at the moment, because they cannot spend 25 hours a week or a month on creating their show. It's like creating a media company inside a startup. So it's a no-brainer that you should not open your own podcast if you're a founder. You should just go to sign to the right gym, to the perfect ones. And this is what podcast guesting is. Because,
Yes.
most of shows, as you said, most of shows, just a second. Yeah. I don't know what happened here to the camera. Okay, let's wait for it to come back. I don't know. It's supposed to work. Okay. Statistically speaking, most shows close after recording just 3 episodes. And also, statistically speaking, most shows don't accumulate even 1,000 listeners in the first year. And what you achieved here, it is outstanding. And for me as a founder to give to deliver my message on your stage, on your platform, it is, I'm beyond grateful for that. So thank you for that as well.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. No, it's starting a podcast is not easy. In the beginning, I couldn't even get a guest. So I was doing myself, and I changed the podcast, the format probably 4 or 5 times. And then finally, I started getting an interest of guests that were good. And that's when I said, okay, now I'm just going to interview people. And I had enough people to come on the show. I've been very lucky with that, getting like, for instance, like I'm in the payments business. We actually had someone on the show twice from Visa.
Wow.
Roger McNamara, the director of B2B at Visa, came on our show. We've had a couple of companies in the chargeback industry come on the show, which is really helpful. One of the guests also from Israel, from a company called JUSTT, and that episode will be out by the time people listen to this podcast. And it's important to have good quality guests and to guest on good quality. I get hit up all the time for people. Oh, I'm doing a new podcast. Sometimes I'll guest on it, and because you can get the clips right from the podcast.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
use those clips on your social media. So it's not completely worthless, but you want to guest on, you got to guest on the best podcast that you can guest on.
Absolutely.
I get invited to be on payments podcasts often, but I want to guest on business podcasts about just general business where I can come on and talk about payments and, talk about what we do here at Nationwide Payment Systems and things like that. So tell us like more about like guesting on podcasts and how people should go about doing that.
Okay, so let's discuss about podcasting. But before we jump into how to do it, let's discover why. I mean, why podcast? I mean, you can go and do whatever it is, but you know, there is a sentence I say usually that conversations convert where content doesn't. Okay, and conversations by conversation mean is that when you hop on the right podcast, it gives you access to someone's established audience and someone's trust. It means that this host has actually gave you trust, and people will listen longer than they scroll. Okay, so obviously people with the attention span these days, with TikTok and all of those reels and shorts, I mean, people are not really dedicating time to listen to something. And when they do, magical things happen, because actually 82% of the C-level executives dedicate at least 5 hours a week to listening to podcasts. And it is amazing because also 68% of them make buying decision based on what they listen to. I don't know if it happens to you, but for me, I bought courses, I bought books, I even invested in stuff just because I've listened to podcasts. It actually made me move and decide faster rather than, scrolling around on TikTok. Because TikTok recipes are nice, but most of them, I mean, you wouldn't do the recipe. It's just nice thing to look. It's not a decision-making platform.
Right.
Where podcast, you get 45 minutes of uninterrupted listening. And this message actually touch the person that listens.
Yeah, because people are having like on the podcast, I try to make it, we're having a conversation, me and you, we're talking about it. So, these are the kind of things people want to listen to. They don't want to listen to 30-minute commercial about something, They want to listen to, here's two business people, chopping it up and talking about how to do things. And yet
Yeah.
people want to learn, right? What is this guy doing? How is he successful? What is this person doing? Why are they successful? What is their business journey like? Things like that. That's what people want to listen to and learn from that, and then connect with you and hopefully do business, together.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is another point to that in terms of buying decisions, when we discuss about B2B, because we're here at the B2B Vault, buying decisions are made, and this is, I'll bring a scoop to you. There is a rule that Google stated. Now, this rule is called the 7-11-4 rule. And what it says is that customers need, in order to buy from you, customers need 7 hours of engagement with your brand, with your company, with your story. And it is a cumulative time. Okay, it's not just like you're just gonna lock them in a room. It's like a timeshare seminar thing, and have them read all the information about your company for 7 hours. No, this is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about reading posts. For example, a post can take maybe 5 minutes of reading, and then they read a blog, a longer blog, 20 minutes, for example, or maybe they see a video of you on YouTube for 40 minutes. But eventually, you're gonna have to need 7 hours of engagement with your audience before they decide to pick you. And that's the 7. The 11 part is you're going to have 11 touch points. So I'm talking about individual interactions. That means liking your post, visiting your web page, maybe reading your blog, maybe, I don't know what it is. It could be watching your video, obviously. And the 4 stands for 4 locations. That means 4 platforms. It could be on YouTube, it could be on LinkedIn, it could be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And this is why Google stated that 7-11-4. This is what we need in order to move people from not knowing us to our clients.
Yeah,
And
when I was in
podcast,
When I was
Yeah.
in the restaurant business, and I would advertise in the newspaper. Nobody looks at newspaper anymore. But they would say that, I learned from that, people need to see your ad between 4 and 8 times before they're going to actually come to the restaurant. So you got to constantly have your stuff out there. And today, we have, smaller businesses versus the big giant businesses. We have a problem. It's not like the old days where people went to the yellow pages. And if for those who don't know what the yellow pages is, was a big thick book like 4 inches thick, right? With every business in it in your area. We don't have that anymore. Now people just go to Google, which is dominated by big business because they're paying for their spots there. So it's hard for you to reach to those spots. So, you have to kind of figure out what are other ways to promote yourself where people are actually going to interact with your business because you might not have enough money to get on the first page of Google.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Most podcasts actually don't charge money in order to be a guest. So that's the thing. Podcast guessing isn't just aligning with Google's rule because it shortcuts it. Because what you can do, you can take one podcast, one episode, and with the system that we use in my company, with one episode, we turn it to evergreen authority because we create a blog post around it that will help your website rank higher in the SEO, search engine optimization. So when you go on Google, obviously, if you have so much information about your business and how you do it and how you bring value and deliver value to your clients, eventually the ranking mechanism will rank you higher because you have this type of content in your website. So this is just one thing that you can turn a podcast to. The other thing is you can turn one episode into, let's say, a sequence of 5 newsletters, because mostly I would say that if you discussed for 50 minutes, I would say that obviously you will touch some pain points of your clients during that session. And you can touch each pain point on a different newsletter. And that is just one thing. So it's SEO content, it is newsletter, and one episode you can obviously repurpose it. I mean, nowadays you got AI tools where you just paste the link in and it just auto-generate 30 pieces of content for you just with just one click. I don't say that it is like the most professional thing, but anyone can do it and it will not cost you as much as putting your ad on the newsletter, for example.
That's true. Yeah, some of the AI is kind of not that great, but that somebody needs to invent something that's a little bit better because I've tried a few of them and the clips it puts out are not very good. I actually have, someone in my office that goes in, tries to find the interesting things and gets 2 or 3, 4 clips out of the podcast that way. And it's
Yeah.
really important. Here's another thing that that I found over the last year that became a big change. Marketing, should you be marketing yourself, right? Or should you be marketing your company? I think right now,
Mm.
Google, LinkedIn, and a lot of other places, personal branding is way better than company branding.
Absolutely. I would take you in on that every day because nowadays, especially when we got AI creating SaaS softwares for us or AI companies, just like, it's like mushrooms after the rain. You got so many, it's like, it's already, it's like a red ocean everywhere. You don't have the edge. So the only edge that we can get as people is our branding, is our values, is our beliefs. And when we go on podcasting, we share those kind of things. For example, so obviously, if you'll go to an AI tool and you'll say, write down a piece of content that will lead people through my funnel, and let's say I want to attract founders and stuff like that. Eventually, what it's going to create and what it's going to do is something that is so vanilla, so detached from your core values and from who you are, that it would not serve you as well as, just going out there and speaking and sharing your value.
So if somebody wants to guest on podcast, what should they prepare or, send somebody? I get emails. Sometimes I'll get a PDF attachment with the whole thing or some link to their LinkedIn profile. I would say some of the pitches I get are way up here, like it's a bunch of corporate stuff. Nobody really want that's just in the end, it's like super boring, because when you look at businesses across the board, 80% of businesses or more are a small to mid-sized business. So that's who our listener is. So we're not having listeners from like the Fortune 100, right? And I get
Yeah.
pitches from those kind of people all the time. I'm like, yeah, I would love, but they don't have any kind of insight to give somebody that's like starting a business. That's what I'm trying to do. Like, hey,
Mm,
if you're in business today, you have a SMB business, you're a B2B company, you're a founder of a SaaS or whatever it is that you're doing, a service company, maybe even an air conditioning company. What's the best way for them to get pitch to get on a podcast?
okay. So, first of all, before they pitch, before they act in order to do it, I would say that most people, when they think about podcasting, they think, oh, I'm not big enough to get invited, or I'm not big enough to speak. But as you mentioned, some people that are big enough and has the following and has all the titles and all those shiny things, they are not the right speakers for you. So I would say that the first thing they're going to have to do is to have a story, to have an insight to share, to have some sort of a lesson, because you don't go on podcasts and just blah blah and just like brag about what you do and sell like a hard sell to the listener, because this is not the way to do it. And you wouldn't host someone that doesn't give insight to your listeners, because you have a promise for your listeners. And for you here at the B2B Vault, it would be to help B2B founders succeed in these difficult situations we're at, regardless of the economy, the interest rates, the AI, the trade wars, all of those kind of things. You help your listener to maneuver and actually succeed. So in order that you will say yes to me, I have to have some story or insight to share and experience that someone out there is eager to hear. So first of all, I would say your story is your authority. Okay, that is the first thing. So listeners, they just want someone who understands their struggle, that has been there and done that, and they found a better way to surpass the pains that they're at. And while speaking on the show, they can save time, money, and pain for the other listeners that may be in this situation, in the point A to point B. And you have to be human. So to be a corporate ladder executive that just speaks from the high level, it wouldn't serve. So I would say that the miniature exercise that you have to do in order to get to know if you can speak on podcast or not is just to finish the sentence that I'm going to share. I help go from to. So for example, my example is I help founders go from unknown to be the industry voice, for example. So you're going to have just one line of clarity is enough for you to actually know if this is a good guest or not, right?
Yeah, you want to know if it's a good guess, like what do they want to talk about, give you some points on what you want to talk about, and then you want to figure out like, okay, is that an interesting subject that people want to really listen to and have a discussion about, because I have to feel comfortable about discussing it also. I can't have somebody on and they're talking about I don't know, astrophysics, right? I don't know anything about
Yeah.
it. I don't have anything to
Yeah.
contribute to the conversation, you know. So, you know, so I try to have conversations that avoid that I know something about. So you talked about avoiding podcast scams. I know, like sometimes I'll get invited onto a podcast, and ultimately at the end they try to sell me like some coaching program, but I don't, which I don't do, but I don't buy
Yeah.
it. That's one
Yeah.
thing I've run into. What are other podcast scams that you run into? I've also run into people that record podcasts and never put them out because
Mm,
for whatever reason, maybe they were trying to sell me something and I didn't buy, so they don't ever put the
mm,
podcast out. So I kind of learned that too, to be careful.
yeah.
And I try to have a conversation with the person before I go on their podcast, so I know what their podcast is about, how do they want the conversation to go, and things like that.
So, yeah, let me just share something before we move to podcast scams because I have a framework. It is served me as some sort of a blueprint to create what I call high converting speaker page. Because as you mentioned, when you try to apply yourself for a podcast, there is one thing that you need to also be doing is just to show your host that you're ready to speak. And I found it the hard way, how to do it. So when I was out of job and tried to apply to different places, just because I knew how to create website, I've decided to repackage my CV inside a landing page and to showcase myself in a better way. So I included also like a podcast that I was on, and I included all my hobbies, for example. And this is something not formal that someone, I don't think that many people do it because usually they just like send a PDF and, cross their fingers that it will be all right. So I knew that I had to do something different in order to get the job. So when I decided to apply, I've created a landing page, and the framework that I've created, the landing page in this story, well, obviously it got me the job. And my boss, my hiring boss, was already knew me before I came in, and he already felt like he knew me, and he had these sort of like inside jokes we had because he knew where I'm from, and it was from a hippie town. So he's like, you're another hippie. And I was like, no, I'm not just another hippie. I'm a cool guy, and I know tech, so you can hire me. And eventually it created this sort of rapport that is needed in order to be on the job. So I've decided to take this blueprint and reframe it as something that I will do for my clients when I try to pitch them on shows. So I call it the reveal framework. So R stands for result center hero. So I would say, for example, for me, I helped companies raise $20 million. So that's just like, it's a big topic, big highlight. I helped people achieve X and Y and Z. So that's the first thing, R. E is evidence and mentions. You have to have some sort of evidence and mentions for the value that you deliver. So you have to include it in your landing page. And V is voice and stories. So if you have, for example, a podcast that you've been on, how easy it is for you to decide if a person is a good guest or not if you already listen to a podcast that they was been on.
Yeah,
It's super
sometimes
easy,
that
right?
helps. You want to see what you want to hear, how their voice sounds, what they're talking about. I always tell people, like, we don't want to hear, it's not a commercial. So if you want to come on and you're going to do a commercial, I'm probably going to not publish the episode, which has happened to me twice. So,
Yeah.
I just told when I was done, I just said, hey, not happening. It's a
And I
horrible
bet,
conversation.
yeah, and I bet it felt so wrong because you spend all those hours, just like preparing for the show. You have this studio, maybe you hire the studio for that, and you paid some editors and everyone and on the payroll, and eventually this show is not as good, and it just shrinks my heart to hear that. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
you want to make sure, like I've told like tons of my friends for years. I have AlanKopelman.com. They're like, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. I go, no, it's not. Like you have to have, when somebody goes to do business with you, the first thing they're going to do is go to Google, they're going to punch your name in, and they're going to see what comes
Mm,
up. And
yes.
if you
Oh
don't
my
have
God.
any, and if you don't have anything going on, they're just like, man, is this person in business or what are they doing? So you got to have stuff going on so that people know who you are. People don't care like about my company, Nationwide Payment Systems, NPS1. No, they're going to do business with me, just like they're going to do business with Gal. They're not going to people do business with people that they like. And you have to,
Absolutely.
you got to have like your own. So I have like AlanKopelman.com and I have B2BVault.info where people can go to there and they can see clips from the podcast. And I even have a link that takes people to all my guest appearances on podcast on Spotify. So there's like a link there and they can hear, different episodes. And, the other thing that a lot of people just don't do today is have um, they don't have like an electronic business card. Everybody tries to get fancy and do
Mm,
weird stuff. And I'm like, because it's super hard. Like, oh, scan this thing, and then it's in my phone, and then I can never find it. Right.
yeah.
So I just have like an electronic business card. I use a thing called Linktree. It's really
Yeah.
simple. You can get it for free. There's other ones you can get for free. I have the premium versions. I can have the color I want and the, brand, but when someone texts me, because people text a lot, right? I
Yeah.
text them that, and then it has all my info, tells them about me, tells them, has a link to the company, has a link to my blog, has a link to the podcast. So they know. So, oh, I want to guest on your podcast. Boom, here's this. You have to have
Yeah.
something prepared.
Absolutely. And this is why this framework that I've created is essential because our result-centered hero is the evidence and mentioned. V is the voice and story. So that means your biography, highlights. What have you achieved? E would stand for the episodes and appearances, past appearances. A is the audience-ready topic. If you'll get a email with someone that mentions the perfect topic, the perfect title, and he also included why it matters for your listeners and for you, and what your listener will get will benefit from his appearance on your show. Wouldn't that be like easy yes?
Yeah, then it's easy to figure out what they want to talk about. And then it's, and like I said, like you said, then you can see an episode they were on, and then you can get a feeling for that. Or you just do a Zoom call with them and have a talk with them. And, that also can
Mm-hmm.
help too if they have never been on a podcast before.
Absolutely. Now, because we finished the reveal framework, okay, now let's go back to the pod scam. Now, as you mentioned, because when you try to find something, usually you Google it, right? The first thing you do is maybe Google, maybe GPT. I don't know. People are relying on GPT these days, but there are things that I call pod scams. And there is an essential belief that some people have that any podcast is a good exposure. But I
Right.
beg the different because only the right stages build trust, leads, and authority. And eventually, if you want authority and trust, you would go on the right shows, not the wrong ones. So there is a thing called pod scam. And let me share with you a story. There was one day, it was actually a year ago in January 2025. I received an email while doing, all the work I do for my clients, pitching them on the right shows. I received an email from Chris Voss. Now, are you familiar with the name Chris Voss?
I've heard the name. I'm not sure who it is, but I know that name.
So Chris Voss, for those of you who know of our listeners, he is an FBI negotiator. Now, this guy rocks. He got a New York Times bestseller book called Never Split the Difference on how to negotiate, because this guy is not messing around. When he's negotiating, it's about life or death situations.
Right.
So I received an email on January 20th, and it is from Chris Voss. And I was shocked. It was from the Chris Voss show. And I was like, okay, this guy is interested on featuring my clients on his podcast. Oh my God, this is a home run. We can pitch. I mean, just getting my clients to his show. I mean, it's so exciting. I was so excited. My wife even was excited, and she didn't know who Chris Voss was. Like, seriously, I was stoked. And then I went on listennotes.com. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but anyway,
yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, it's like the Google for podcasts. It's a free website. You can search for podcasts there and see stats. But so he had claimed his show there. So that means that the data that is given there on listen notes, that show up on listen notes, is somehow manipulated by the Chris Voss show, because he fed the data to listennotes.com. So I saw that he's ranked in the top 1% podcast, and he already established over 2,000 episodes, and it was like, oh my God. And he mentioned that he hosted astronauts, presidents, prince and princesses of Arab nations, and just like, it was so good. And on the email, he mentioned that, okay, to appeal, all you have to do is to schedule here and place an order for $200. And I was like, $200 to be on the Chris Voss from the FBI show? Oh my God, that's a bargain. I would do it every day. So I was so happy. I was over the clouds. I sent it to my clients, and they were like, oh my God, no shit. Sorry about the word, but you just booked me on the Chris Voss show. And I was like, yes, so happy. We were so happy. But I was bragging about it at a WhatsApp community with my friends. And the other day, one of my friends told me, Carl, did you check his website? Did you check his YouTube? Did you check everything? And I was like, I mean, come on, Chris Voss. That's the name of the person. Why should I check it? And then he mentioned that I should check it. And I went on YouTube, and I've checked his YouTube account, and I've seen episodes that went on live like 3 months ago, only had 1 view. Things that he uploaded 2 months ago only had maybe 8 views. And I was like, oh, snap. And then I clicked and seen that this is not the Chris Voss I know. Turns out it was another Chris Voss running a pay-to-play show. And I was like, oh my God, my client already paid $200 for that. And everyone knows now that I book people to the Chris Voss show. And I was like, oh snap, how can I tell them? How can I? It was so embarrassing. So what I did next is I negotiated with Chris Voss. I was negotiating with him. It was pretty easy and simple. Yeah, it's not a negotiation like an FBI negotiation over terrorists and stuff like that. It's not a life or death. But I got the $200 back to my client. So I won against Chris Voss, negotiating him.
Chris Voss.
Well, it's Chris Voss.
Yeah, but he's
so
like,
yeah,
wasn't the guy you thought it was.
Yeah. So that led me to the point where I created a framework to research podcasts before I choose to go on them. And it was so embarrassing because, pod scams exist. And I don't say that it is a scam, because obviously he has a show, and good for him. 2,000 people, $200 an episode, like 30 minutes. Amazing. that could it could be a good business. And I don't say nothing against his podcast. I mean, he's doing the show and he's running it for days now. So yeah, good for him. But I was fooled. I felt like I was fooled. I felt like it was a scam.
I've gotten similar things like that, where the person is pitching me to like, oh, do this, pay for this feature in a magazine, $1,300, $1,500, 3,000, 4,000. I had somebody pitching me, they wanted 30 grand. They're going to make a TV show out of, a
Mm,
TV episode. I'm like, no, you can't, you got to be really careful with this stuff. There's a lot of
yeah.
companies out there. There are some companies that will, you know, there's a couple of there's a few companies out there where they charge people maybe like 40, $50 or $100 to be on their show. I did maybe one or two of those in the very beginning because I wanted to get some experience, so and they
Hmm.
had decent shows. So, but I wouldn't spend, and they had views. So they had a big following. So, but there's a lot of definitely scams out there. So if people want to
So
learn
yeah,
more
I
about,
don't.
huh? No, so if
Yeah.
people want to learn
Uh,
more about like what you do, what's the best way for them to find out about what you do at Podstar?
so the best way to find out is just to connect with me on LinkedIn. I would say. And if what they really want is not just to follow me and just to speak on podcast, I would just highly recommend them to go on school.com/podstar and just join our community. And maybe they can get featured on your show as well because you're there as well.
I'm
Um,
there.
so uh, yeah, and yeah, I would argue just join. It's free. Every Monday we got Monday Matchmaking Mania where we match you up with podcasts from my database. I work with over 6 million podcasts in my database filtered by keywords and demographic statistics and all of those kind of shenanigans that marketing managers have to know. But there are over 600 podcasts that we already worked with that I also invite them to my community. So we got plenty of podcasts there, just waiting for good guests.
Yeah, it's a great way to promote your business. It's a great way to build your personal brand. So if you're not familiar with School, SKOOL/Podstar, and you'll find Gal's community there. I'm in there. It's a great way to talk to other people who are guesting, talk to people who have podcasts, and get good information about podcasting and how to be a guest and all that. Are you still there, Gail?
Yeah.
Oh, your camera
Yeah, I'm
went.
still there. Oh,
Your camera went
oh
off.
snap. Just, yeah. Okay. There we go.
We're gonna have fun editing, but we'll just cut you out while you disappeared. So thank you for Gal for being on the podcast today. No, and he didn't fool me by saying I was gonna get Gal Gadot.
Even
On the
though that's
pod.
an easy yes, right?
It's what?
That's an easy yes. I mean, I would
Yes.
host Gal Gadot on whatever she wants. Yeah, I
Exactly.
would
If
do
she
it for
wants to
free.
come on the show,
Yeah.
I'll have her on anytime. But thank you for being a guest today on the show. And B2B Vault is um, on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. You can connect with me on LinkedIn and you can follow the podcast there. And if you need payment processing services, NPS1, nationwidepaymentsystems.com. And you can book an appointment and get a demo of our latest products and services. Peace out, everybody, and carpe diem.